All right, thanks very much. Sorry I can't be there. I hope you've had a fruitful day of discussions. My name's Stephen White. Yes, I work for CSIRO, where I run the energy efficiency research. I'm also the operating agent of IEA Annex 81, Data-Driven Smart Buildings. So I guess I just want to bring you some work that we did in Annex 81 and perhaps less about the technology side of things and more towards, well, what should we do about that? In particular, what should government do? And so some of the policy recommendations we've pulled together based on our discussions over 3 years and based on interviews with industry. This is an inadequate way of describing some of the work that we've been doing in Annex 81. Um, Pardon me, but I show you the structure just to give you an idea of the things that we've been covering off on. So Annex 81 is divided into 4 subtasks, A, B, C, and D, as is typically the way. The first subtask A, entitled Open Data and Data Platforms, really looks at the data infrastructure involved in delivering smart building services. And clearly that was the area that Subu was just talking about in the last presentation. So there we were talking about data governance, data platforms, and data information models. So semantic modeling and stuff was a core part of that. And the ability to unlock the FAIR data principles: findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. Once you have collected your data, got it into a single place where you can use it, then you start to think about the sorts of data-driven services that you might use. And we divided those services into 2 different subtasks. Subtask B on model predictive control, and subtask C capturing some of the other things such as automated fault detection and diagnosis and building integrated control or buildings to grid. And I'll talk more about that later. And then subtask D, capturing that together, looking at some of the business models around that and sharing knowledge. So you'll find all the resources there. I'll give you the web link, annex81.iea-ebc.org there. And when you go into that, I just point out that the publications prepared by the Annex are sitting there. We've come essentially to the end now, so there's a good population of publications, but also lots of journal articles there that from the participants in the Annex. There was 18 countries, 50 odd organizations, around 150 researchers involved over the period there. So, quite a significant body of work that's been published. If you click on the case studies tab there, that will take you to a separate web portal where I think there's something like 20 case studies where in the real world people have deployed data-driven solutions and a bit of a pro forma way of reporting on those. So it's quite a nice little website there of case studies. There's also a data directory. If you click on that, then that ports you to a separate web page hosted by National University Singapore, where you'll find lots and abstracting of lots of data, so that you can, if you are getting started in AI, machine learning and stuff, you can find some public out where all the relatively good data sources are to get yourself started. But that's a lot of technical material there, and you could ask, well, okay, what should government be doing about it? How can government help to make this industry grow and address the barriers? So I'm taking it from a government perspective here, and I'm now launching into just one specific piece of work in the Annex. And, when we look at it from a government policy, what's the imprimatur or the reason to actually do something? And there's this understanding now that all of the policies, the schemes, the rating systems, etc., instead of just considering annual energy consumption, need to also think about the time of use over a day. And here's why. I show a picture there. This is 3 days in South Australia. So that's one of, I think it's 6 NEM regions in Australia. And it just shows the profile of the source of electricity generation in the electricity market from midnight through the middle of the day to midnight. The color coding there is the source of the electricity. So the yellow splodge there is solar PV. The green is wind, and the orange is gas in this particular state. The purple is imports. And what you see is that around the middle of the day, you have essentially free zero emissions energy. Indeed, over that 3 day period, the average price of electricity was negative. Not only was less than or better than free, yet you could get paid for consuming that energy on the wholesale electricity market if you were connected. So free zero emissions energy there, and in the shoulder period of the day and into the night, expensive fossil fuel energy. Not all grids look like that, but certainly in many grids, it's starting to look more like that. And progressively over the next decade, as we transition to more and more renewable energy, this is what our grids will look like. And so, if you're a building owner, why wouldn't you want to use that free zero emissions? It's economically better, it's environmentally better. So, can we shift load towards there? That is the policy question, I guess, that the International Energy Agency is most concerned about. How do we do that in buildings? Well, we need digitalization as our tool. Digitalization, we would say, is the bringing together of data, access to data, connectivity to bring it to the people who need it, and the ability to bring smarts to that in the form of analytics. This particular diagram from LBNL, or adapted slightly from that, just shows that sort of breakdown then of the two components that our annex is looking at. The EMIS, Energy Management Information Service Data Infrastructure. That's having access to the data and bringing that together then into the data warehouse there, where you can actually bring those data sources together. So you need the connectivity for that, and then the energy productivity applications is where the analytics happen. So in Annex 81, we would say that energy bill monitoring, energy analytics, fault detection and diagnosis are relatively mature, or at least in Australian premium would see those things fairly routinely. Building controls optimization, or dynamic optimization for conditions, probably relatively immature and poorly adopted. And then this flexible demand application is the one that is a new requirement based on what I just described, and unfortunately we have relatively minimal adoption, at least in Australia. And here's the rub for the policymaker, is that for the clean energy transition, to get more renewables into our grid, we need to get a 10 times increase in the amount of flexibility from our buildings over this decade. So that's taken directly from the IEA net zero emissions by 2050 scenario. So we at IEA Annex 81, taking that as our policy imprimatur, then went off and we researched what the barriers were to adoption of digitalization as the key enabling tool, and we did a whole bunch of interviews with industry experts, and we've formulated that into a set of actions that we believe government should actually do. And it's set out here in a traditional IEA energy efficiency style. At the top is the target that we think government should be shooting for. And there we say that right now, that's the immediate opportunity there, is that digitalization can help to reduce energy wastage by up to is a bit of a weasel word there, up to 40% in commercial buildings. And there are plenty of scenarios where that's occurred in the past. But looking forward, you can see that the targets that we're shooting for are around demand response. And these are taken directly from IEA's net zero by 2050 scenario modeling. That is, by 2030, we need all new buildings to be flexible resources, and we need them connected and automated to enable that to happen. And then by 2050, 85% of existing buildings are retrofitted to also be demand response ready and have the necessary digitalization. So that's the targets that government should be setting itself. And then to actually achieve that, we have a set of recommendations. And in traditional style, what is it? The sticks, the carrots, and the tambourines. That's the regulation, information, and incentives. And they're grouped under certain themes that came out in our interviews and some detailed solutions there. So, what are those key themes that we recommended? Well, one of the recommendations was to provide more information. In all of our discussions, we found that getting a building digitalized or enabled for flexibility was a complex purchasing decision and one where there's many products on offer or many different versions. And I think Subu showed, some of the different levels for semantic modeling and stuff. So just to have more guidance on what would be an appropriate investment is needed. Interestingly enough, data, access to data, quality data, etc., was probably the thing that drove the most visceral response from all our industry participants and the need to improve on that. And so we came up with two themes that relate to data. One, highly linked to theme one, is that more information, but getting that information in a way where it's more consumable could be to establish some sort of certification of what a digital ready building is. And if there is some certification, not necessarily standards, but certainly guidance documentation that could, and perhaps rating systems around it that could tell you what it is that you need to achieve. And then data sharing risk also. And so there was a need for solutions to improve certainty there and to manage possible compliance issues. There was also a couple of themes there that relate to, well, let's just go on and do it there. First of all, the suggestion, well, if government really wants this to happen, they should lead by example. They should practice what they preach, if you like. And so exhorting government to start adopting in their own buildings, and also to provide support for innovators and researchers to develop exciting new products to bring to market. And then there was the general idea that there needs to be more money washing around in the system. No surprise there. And so that was in the form of direct incentives, but also incentives from the electricity system itself. Interestingly enough, of the prioritization around that theme 5, that's just throw money at this, was probably the one that was least favored, even by the people who stood to benefit from it. And the general feeling was that this is pretty cost-effective stuff anyway. And so it's not that we need more money, it's more we need a level playing field. And so theme 8 there around integrating buildings into the electricity system was very much around, let's have a level playing field for buildings that are participating in the electricity system and access to the incentives that are naturally there. And the last one there, theme 7, was no surprises around that, building the workforce skills and capacity. That is that ability to work in both IT and OT, operations technology, is something that we need more of. Um, just delving a little bit more then into some of the actual more specific tasks there, and there's lots of text. So I've got some boxes here to try and guide your eyes. A real feeling that researchers had a place to play, not just from the point of view of innovating new analytics technologies, but they should be incentivized for that. That is funding, grants, and things for doing that, but also providing engaging the research sector to go in and do the monitoring to enable learnings to come out of real world examples. And then that would then automatically lead back into providing databases of knowledge from those pilot buildings and help to inform the guides and terminology that we use. So definitely lots of interest in supporting researchers there. Around certification, it was seen that we need to insert rules around digitalization into the national construction codes that we have. So when we build buildings, they come ready to go in a digitalized form. To a certain extent, that's happening anyway, but we certainly would like to see it even in the lower tier buildings. And so the code is always going to be something that drives that. We're in an active discussion right now for the next version of the National Construction Code in Australia to see what we could do there. But for existing buildings, that's where perhaps this certification comes in, and whether you put it into a green star or LEED type rating scheme, or whether you put it into a green lease schedule or the like, some way of actually recognizing things as an incentive for existing buildings to retrofit. Obviously, you can't manage what you don't measure and stuff, and measurement and verification is always going to be a crucial tool. A belief that that measurement and verification is one of the things that enables you to, on a performance-based way, provide incentives. So that's an underpinning enablement that's required. Government leading by example, yes, it should actually put money where its mouth is by investing in digital technology under the incentives, but also it should look to maintain a centralized expert team. Government has a portfolio of buildings, it's big enough. Any individual agency of government probably can't recruit the required team, but to have a support staff across agencies would be a useful thing to do. Data sharing risks, perhaps if there were regulated requirements for specific data to be collected, particularly relating to demand response and grid integration, then that would help, because it actually, by mandating it, then that gives you a really good reason to talk to the IT department. But also there was possibility for government to provide some sort of data stewardship or data hub to collect that regulated data, and probably you could then use that to provide measurement and verification services as well. Building workforce skills, we need digital training across the property sector, as discussed. And often I find that it's not just about the curriculum, it's very much around the incentives that go with that training that drives success in training. And then integration into the electricity system. Definitely we need some level of reform in the electricity system to properly recognize the multiple benefits of flexibility. And quite possibly we need a dedicated market operations platform for providing price signals and managing the dispatch of buildings. In the United States, I know you've got the Midas platform in California, and things like that are ways that we're starting to head towards that. One of the particular things we're working on in Australia is around obligation schemes on electricity retailers to actually purchase a minimum amount of um, demand reduction. That traditionally, these energy efficiency obligation schemes or white certificate schemes traditionally been used for annual energy consumption, but we're seeing the first signs of peak demand reduction schemes starting to happen there that actually catalyze a market to purchase these kinds of services. So that was our recommendations to government. The need for digitalization, yes, there's a no regrets part, which is that we can enable a whole range of useful services. But looking forward, government getting involved to drive flexibility from buildings using digitalization as an enabling tool. So happy to take any questions on that.
Okay, thank you very much, Stephen, for that really interesting and stimulating talk. And thanks as well for getting up so early in the morning. I know that this is not the most convenient time for you, but yeah, really appreciate it. I guess I'll open up the floor to questions maybe from the room first.
Hi, Stephen. Ettore Zanetti here. Very interesting presentation. I'm curious on, among all the data-driven approaches that were tested throughout Annex 81, were there any successful stories in terms of experimental studies? And if so, was researchers, was it companies? How did it go?
Yeah. Yeah, good question. So lots of examples in model predictive control. We picked up 6 test cases very quickly, and we collected the data and have published those data sources. So if you're interested in data on those, so I don't think that there was any lack of implementation. Were they cost effective and reproducible at scale for industry in model predictive control? I think that that was not our task in a way to sort of explain that, other than to say that there's plenty of evidence that the industry can and is doing it to some extent. Quite interesting at the beginning of these IEA annexes, we do a technology readiness level assessment where we lay out what the research or the technology is, and is this TRL1 that is basic fundamental, or is it TRL9, in which case everyone's already doing it, and it's quite a spread of people's assessment as to whether this is done and dusted tech or not. But a lot of the pain, the barriers, the cost we found were perhaps more in the data collection side rather than the analytics side.
Thanks. Gregor's got a question in the chat. I don't know if you can speak up. Gregor, go ahead and speak up if you can. Thanks.
I think I can.
Yep, we hear you.
Super. Stephen, in the policy recommendations that you detailed later, you did mention M&V. And I was wondering if measurement and verification is viewed as a means for accelerating technology adoption, in that more people see quantified and verified savings or impact. They see the value of digitalization rather than claiming we need this to keep the lights on.
I think when it comes to energy efficiency savings measurement, everyone has got some sort of M&V algorithm, I guess, sitting in the back of their tool that says this is the amount of energy I've saved through what I've done.
Yeah.
And so it was more around the, if you like, the authorization of a specific M&V tool, which is the one that you'll get paid for. And so there's nothing like getting paid to actually kind of
Absolutely.
sort of drive adoption, I guess. And if government are going to do performance-based incentives at all, then you just don't want the back of the envelope M&V in every single provider's different one kind of being the benchmark. No, you need some sort of benchmark on which you pay out on. So that's where that is. And M&V for annual energy savings is something that's relatively easy. And I think the challenges we're looking at in CSIRO are sort of bringing M&V tools to either peak demand or to instant event-based
Events.
demand reduction, and that gets really tricky when you
Very tricky.
shrink the temporal time scale down to hourly or a block of hours in a day rather than over a full day or a month or a year. It becomes progressively easier the longer the duration you're doing your M&V on.
I can only second that observation, right? Every
Mm.
time you're trying to rely maybe even on models, detailed or data driven, and you're trying to isolate um, relatively short temporal effects and like demand avoidance or yeah, things of that nature. Really, that emphasize the time value of energy. M&V is getting really, really complicated. So it's not an easy one.
Mm. So we're just getting started now, going into preparation phase for the new IEA Annex 96 on grid integrated control of buildings. And so that's kind of bringing together Annex 81, which is really focused on that data infrastructure piece, and Annex 82, which has been working on the flexibility side, bringing the two together. And I'm sure we'll be delving into that sort of M&V story around the shorter time scales, so trying to unpick that as best as possible.
Maybe one follow-up question, if I'm allowed, is if you, with the data clearinghouse, that kind of a platform on which, sharp minds in machine learning, data science, and algorithmic development could latch on. Did you feel from a subjective perspective it has spawned an excitement around the buildings as a problem domain, and there's kind of an entry of computer science and yeah, let's call them computer science researchers that see now with something like the DCH, they can actually get to apply their tools, and there's kind of if I may say, a cross-pollination between the buildings and the CS world.
I don't think I can comment fully to that. But certainly with the data clearinghouse, it's taken us a number of years to get to a point where there's something that's relatively plug and play for people to use, I guess, and getting rid of that friction, I guess, was step one. But now we're at the point where we can run competitions there, and our desire, right from the word go, was to make it as clear and easy as possible a journey of I can do advanced maths. I can use MATLAB, I can use whatever toolkit that I use to go from the algorithm to a deployed algorithm in a real building there. You don't have to do all the kind of hard grunt of installing kit on sites and stuff. You've got the data curated in a way that you can query it and stuff, and so people can focus on the bit that is their core strength, I guess. So to that extent, we've certainly gone a journey to enable enable that, and we're just starting to, there's a bunch of competitions that we're launching now. Annex 81 has got 2 competitions. They've just launched for anyone interested just a week ago. One is a load disaggregation challenge. That is working out what the HVAC load is based on site load. So doing that as using time series data. And the other one is a model predictive control challenge using the BOP test as the using more synthetic data, I guess, for that.
Okay, thanks so much, Stephen. I wonder, you mentioned Annex 96, and I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about that, and in particular, if there are opportunities for researchers, maybe even for students to plug in to those efforts, and then where you see those opportunities being.
Yeah, great for thanks for the opportunity for that. Yes, so Annex 96, grid integrated control of buildings. We're only just getting started, so of which we have a year of preparation phase, then 3 years of working phase, then 1 year of reporting phase. So the 5-year journey is just getting started. We got approval to go into that preparation phase in June. So absolutely, anyone who's interested, feel free to reach out to me. The subtask A there will be more around this sort of around this sort of data and how do we make it available, particularly interacting with the electricity system, and are we price signal driven, or are we otherwise event driven? What are those minimum pieces of information that need to be shared to drive an ecosystem there? We're looking at running challenges similar to Annex 82, where we set up scenarios of what the electricity system needs, and when we have a cluster of buildings, how would they respond? And I know Annex 82 has seen issues around rebound effects and potentially even pre-bound effects of running algorithms and things, and how does that fit for the electricity system? And then really just trying to, in subtask C, really trying to shrink wrap tried, tested solutions in a way that everyone can have a level of confidence that certain flexibility solutions are going to work and are well characterized to be able to be rewarded. And then, again, the sort of the case studies, the deployment, the implementation issues being explored in subtask D. So yeah, you cover off on both the sort of the aggregate level, and we'll try and collaborate with ISGAN and the other TCPs that are more on the electricity industry and energy industry side, as well as and bring that together with our knowledge in the buildings industry.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for that, and thanks again for getting up so early to join us and inform us. So really appreciate it.